Palantir,
Yes.
I think let's give them the benefit of the doubt. It sounds. I think they're painted as villains.
They are,
and it just they have this image to me of like the James Bond lair.
Yeah,
where they're sort of rubbing their hands in glee.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about them.
So there's definitely that theme, that vibe, as you might say, to them. I think, on the kind of progressive left, there's a bit of a Palantir derangement syndrome going on where, they are the worst of the worst in all, of all the tech giants. I think Piers Corbyn leads a weekly demonstration against them outside their HQ.
That doesn't surprise me.
So there's definitely that going on. And, the kind of things that are thrown at them are, they acted for ICE, the deportation.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Correct, thank you. In the US. They do work for the Israeli military. But, these are all things that other people do as well. Amazon does as well. And they don't get the same bad press. But, so there's definitely a bit of a derangement syndrome against them, which I'm trying not to be infected by.
Do you think that's because we don't use them on a consumer level in the way that we use Amazon? So if Amazon do work for the government, you sort of say, oh, yeah, but they deliver me my parcels.
Possibly.
Whereas Palantir, it's like, we don't know much about them because we don't have a consumer relationship with them.
Well, also, they're big guys. So Peter Thiel is the guy who set them up and still owns a big chunk of them, I think.
And within the, what do they call it, anarcho-capitalist sort of tech bro US scene, he's sort of the
big
main
mover.
figure.
Yeah. And Alex, I've forgotten his name now, the CEO. So these guys are both, they have views on everything that, people might expect them to have on. But they make pronouncements about things like we should bring back the draft, we should bring back conscription.
Alex Karp,
thank you. Yes, yeah. Khan, I think I was thinking of after you confused me with Alex Karp, yeah. And things like, they've said things like, if you don't believe in competition, you're a loser. They've said things that are fairly anti-woman, I would say. So, they've not done themselves any favours, I don't think, in terms of why are they the big baddies. They never think to bite their lip or not to say something that comes into their heads. So I think to some extent they bring it upon themselves. But at the same time, I think we should accept that they do some good work. One of the things, I don't know if you know about the contracts they have in the UK, but they have a £330 million contract with the NHS, which is, I think it's got a federated data system. This is the idea of having one patient record. So at the moment, your GP has some records for you. If you've ever been to the hospital, they'll have some records for you, but nobody ever joins those up. And I don't know if you've ever been to a hospital outside your area. When I was in the north of Ireland last year, I had to go to a hospital because I fell over in the woods and I had a big gouge in my leg. And obviously they didn't even know who I was, because they don't have any records of me. So the idea is that they'll create this one record, and they claim, and the NHS has kind of been part of the parties who've said that, backed up this claim, that there's been 100,000 extra treatments because of the work they've already done on this one patient record system. So I don't want to be kind of Luddite about this. I think, if you can bring in technology to situations like that and improve services, then we should be all for that. That's really good. But I still have some kind of slight doubts, and we'll come on to those in a minute, because the reason I'm bringing it as a news item is because what's blown up recently is more of a debate and a row about a contract they had pitched for the Metropolitan Police in London. And this has been it's been slowly evolving, there's different things happen over time. So they were apparently awarded this contract, this £25 million contract, and it's to kind of streamline a lot of the backroom work that the police do. So things like, if somebody applies for an arms licence, they will do a lot of the background check that at the moment is done in a very manual way. So it's doing things like that. But, obviously the more they start providing that service, you expect the more that they will do. Now, they had originally pitched for that work and been awarded it by the Metropolitan Police. The Metropolitan Police is overseen by, effectively, Sadiq Khan, the London mayor. I think it's called MoCop, the organisation. It's the Commissioner of Police, Metropolitan Commissioner of Police. Some initials that they use, and Sadiq Khan has blocked that contract that had been awarded and now has been disawarded because of Sadiq Khan's intervention. Palantir then said that they were going to sue the office of the mayor for blocking the contract because they believe it was awarded legally. Sadiq Khan says the problem is that they didn't go through the right procurement process. And he's kind of riding two horses, I think, a bit on this one. So on one level, he's saying, listen, I can't intervene in a procurement because I just don't like the people. So, I'm intervening not because I don't like them, but because I think that they've gone through the wrong process in the tendering work that they've done. But at the same time, you can see he's kind of tipping to his supporters and saying, "Oh, we really don't like them." But do their values really line up with us and our public service ethos? So I think he's riding two horses a little bit with it. But the reason it's in the news again, so it's a bit of a drip feed. The reason it's in the news this week is because the Metropolitan Police have issued their report, which says that because this contract that they had lined up with Palantir is not going ahead, they will now not make the savings that they would have made through it. And those savings mean that they will now have to lose another 500 frontline jobs. Actually, they say between 500 and 700. I think that includes some more backroom jobs as well. Now, that's in the context of a Metropolitan Police which has the lowest number of officers per 1,000 people. It has the lowest number of that since 1981. So they're already struggling. And effectively what they're saying is that without this new contract, they will need to lose another 500 posts. So that's obviously quite big news, and that's why this is in the news at the moment. So obviously there's lots of sides to this. What side might you take? And I think it's a little bit tricky. I mean, I definitely think it's really important that you go through the right procurement process. But obviously there's a lot of politicking going on at the same time. So it's kind of hard to work your way through it, really. There is this is allegedly, I should say before I say this, that there's an allegation that there was an earlier contract that was, so only contracts over £500,000 need to go through this full procurement process. And Palantir had previously done a contract for Scotland Yard, which I think was something like £490,000, so it was just below. And I think there's some cynicism about whether actually that really should have gone through the process and it was just pitched just so that it didn't have to. So, I would share some of that cynicism about that, knowing how public service procurement exercises work. But the thing that Sadiq Khan, and I naturally I wouldn't line up with Sadiq Khan. It's unlikely for me to say, oh yes, I agree with Sadiq Khan. But I did just bring a quote of what he said, which I think is I think is spot on. So what he says is, these private companies give you a good deal or something for nothing for a short period of time. You can become reliant on it, or you've got rid of the staff that did that job before, or staff that could be trained up. then when it comes to procurement, A, there's only one company that can win the contract, but B, you've completely hollowed out the expertise to do that work in-house. These are my general concerns.
Sounds like it was written by Hilary.Salt.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I read that and I thought, wow.
Yeah, he's spot on.
I'm going to have to say I absolutely agree with him there. And I know we read Vassal State recently, didn't we, by Angus Hanson, and he makes these similar points that often the procurement process does give you something for free and then kind of ties you in.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's no way out.
Yeah. And I obviously understand that the potential upsides, and if you're in these positions, whether you're heading up the Met or you're in Sadiq Khan's position as London Mayor, you might be tempted because a company comes in, big multinational, and says, well, we can offer that, we can do that for you, and it'll only cost you this. And you think, oh, that's cheaper than we could do it.
Yeah.
Right. Then you get tempted to offer them the contract. But nobody talks about the downsides.
Yeah.
And when we're dealing with going back to short-term politics and, just being sort of pragmatic in the short term, but not thinking about bigger principle and bigger picture, it'd be easy for these companies to get a foothold and then up their prices or, asked to do more things, bid for contracts elsewhere. And suddenly we have, like Sadiq Khan says, institutions where the expertise has been hollowed out and we are hostage to these private companies, and we have to say, well, yeah, we don't really have a choice because we can't do that. And part of the sort of there is no alternative, Thatcher and onwards thinking of where our politics has gone is that we don't even think that that's an option. A lot of what we talked about in your local election campaign about the social care in Trafford, I remember when you pitched it to me, I was like, what, a council could do that? I suppose, why not? They're the council. Why not have a care home themselves?
Exactly.
So that they can compete, so that they're not being held hostage.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that kind of, in terms of this whole debate, I think Sadiq Khan's stance there, I think is right. I do have a bigger, perhaps more woolly concern about Palantir. So they were one of the companies that was identified by Edward Snowden, in that stuff that he was doing about how much surveillance of ordinary citizens is going on. And they obviously do have a lot of contracts with US police forces and the government and CIA and all those kind of US military. UK military as well, actually. They have a contract with the Royal Navy. And the thing that kind of worries me about them is that it's never very clear when they're harvesting all this data to what extent they're cross-using that data for other contracts. So, for example, the work they've done for the NHS, that gives them access to a huge amount of data. Are they, when they're doing work for the Met Police, using any of that data that they've got for something else to underpin the service they're providing elsewhere? Now, data protection wouldn't allow them to do that, but I just have a real background worry that actually they will effectively start to own that data and start to use it. Things like facial recognition, that some police forces are using. So I do really worry about that. And I think our relationship with our public services, with the NHS, with the police, with our local councils, is built on trust and a kind of respect for, your privacy and your data. And it feels to me that this really potentially undermines it in ways that I don't think we really understand. So, I would want to, as well as make sure the procurement exercise is done correctly, be really digging into that contract and looking at exactly how safe is that data and are they not being allowed to use it elsewhere? Because that's the thing I worry more about, is that, I understand the stuff that they're doing for this police forces in America. They effectively own the data once they've got that data. And I really worry about that. I do think that allowing those kind of companies to take on these public sector contracts does mean that we undermine that relationship of trust we have with our public services. And that, to me, is the bigger worry about all this than...
And a lot of this, you can't go back.
Exactly.
This is the real worry with anything, any sort of authoritarian measures, particularly when it comes to technology. It's so hard to go back. This is why a lot of people are upset about digital ID and still are. I remember seeing something, I really don't know if this is just a concern or whether there was any merit to this, about the idea of Amazon giving or selling the data from Ring doorbells to the police in America, because that's an amazing wealth of data that you've got about where crime is happening.
Yeah.
You know, if people are stealing parcels
from
somebody's door, and they're going through Amazon to check the footage to see if they've been robbed.
Yeah.
You know, that's the sort of thing that is, I think, potentially very scary.
Yeah.
And we have to have, even if we're going to accept that we're giving contracts to these big, you know, very powerful companies, we at least need to know what's our red line and where are we going to put some resistance up.
Yeah. One of the things that Palantir said in its defence when, you know, all this debate was going on about the Met contract is that we've done, you know, all this work and we've helped to solve all these crimes. Excuse me. And we've identified 1,000 women in Bedfordshire whose partners are at risk of committing domestic violence. And I kind of thought, well, who's asked you to do that? You know, it's like a Minority Report kind of thing, isn't it? Where they're kind of trying to preempt who might commit a crime. And I understand they've done quite a lot of that in America, kind of racial profiling almost, which is really problematic. So, you know, I kind of think it just leaves me with a really strong worry that we are handing over a lot of data to an organisation that might think it's using it for good, but actually is using it in ways that mean that they know things about us that maybe we don't want them to know.
Mm. And in this fight, there may be allies that you did not expect. Sadiq Khan.
Indeed.
Strange bedfellows.
Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah.